The phone buzzed at 3 in the morning, and that's when my world changed forever. I'm Jack Granger, 38 years old, construction foreman in Millfield, Maine. I build things for a living, houses, dreams, futures. What I didn't expect was to spend a Tuesday night rebuilding my entire existence from scratch. Tessa lay beside me, snoring softly. Her auburn hair spread across the pillow like spilled wine. 15 years of marriage, and I still thought she was beautiful. Even when she left her phone face up on the nightstand, buzzing like an angry wasp. The message preview made my stomach drop 3 stories. I'm keeping the baby, but I'm putting Chad's name on the birth certificate. Easier that way. I stared at those words until they burned into my retinas. Easier. For who, exactly? The father or the fool? My hands didn't shake as I picked up her phone. They should have, but they didn't. Maybe shock works like anesthesia. Numbs you right when you need it most. The message thread told the whole story. Chad Whitby, the Golden Boy developer who'd been sniffing around Tessa's real estate office for months. Pictures of hotel rooms, plans to meet, and now this, the grand finale to their little romance. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. Then I got to work. First, I texted back from Tessa's phone. Okay. Simple. Clean. Let them think I was rolling over like a good little husband. While Tessa dreamed whatever cheaters dream about, I moved through our Victorian house like a ghost. Down to my basement workshop where I kept our important papers. Lease agreements, joint accounts, insurance policies. All the threads that wove our life together. Time to start cutting. By dawn, I'd canceled the lease on our house. Good thing it was month to month. Emptied our joint checking account, leaving exactly half for her. Forwarded her little announcement to Chad's personal email with a subject line, "Congratulations on fatherhood." But that wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. I drove to the fancy gift basket place on Harbor Street, the one that charges $50 for chocolate and teddy bears. The teenage clerk looked half asleep until I explained what I wanted. "A congratulations basket for a new father," I said, sliding a $100 bill across the counter. "Make it special. Balloons, cigars, the works, and I want a card that says, 'Can't wait to meet my new son or daughter,' from your baby mama's husband. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories." Her eyes went wide. "Sir, are you sure about this?" Never been more sure of anything in my life. I had it delivered to Chad's mansion on Elm Street. Figured his wife Alyssa would be the one to answer the door. When I got home, Tessa was in the shower, humming some pop song like she didn't have a care in the world. I packed her belongings methodically. Clothes, jewelry, all those little knickknacks she collected. Everything fit into 6 neat boxes, which I stacked on the front porch. Then I called a locksmith. "Emergency lock change," I told him. "Wife's been giving out keys to strangers." Not technically a lie. By the time Tessa came downstairs in her bathrobe, hair wrapped in a towel, I was sitting at the kitchen table with coffee and the morning paper, acting like nothing had changed. "Morning, honey," she said, kissing my cheek. "You're up early?" Couldn't sleep. She poured herself coffee, chattering about her day, client meetings, lunch with Monica, all the normal lies that had been our life for months. At 8:30, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. The key didn't turn. "Jack?" she called. "Something's wrong with the lock." I folded my paper and walked to the front door, where she stood staring at her key like it had betrayed her. "That's because I changed it," I said. Her face went through several expressions, confusion, irritation, then something approaching panic as she noticed the boxes on the porch. "What is this? What's going on?" I handed her an envelope. Copies of all the paperwork, bank statements, lease cancellation, the works. You'll need them when you explain things to Chad's wife. The color drained from her cheeks. "Jack, I can explain." "No need. Your text to Chad last night explained everything." She grabbed for her phone, scrolling frantically. When she found the message thread, her hands started shaking. "You went through my phone? You left it buzzing on the nightstand. Hard to miss I'm keeping the baby but putting Chad's name on the birth certificate. Real touching, by the way." Tessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Jack, please, we can work this out." "Sure we can. You can work it out with Chad, assuming his wife doesn't throw him out first." As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I had a pretty good guess who it was. "Jack Granger. This is Alyssa Whitby." Her voice could have frozen the harbor. "We need to talk." "About the gift basket? I hope Chad liked it." "You son of a—" She caught herself. Meet me at the anchor tap in 1 hour. See you there? I hung up and smiled at Tessa, who looked like she'd seen her own ghost. That was Alyssa. Sounds like she got the basket. The anchor tap sits on Harbor Street like a barnacle on a ship's hull, ugly, stubborn, and impossible to scrape off. It's the kind of place where construction workers grab breakfast beers and fishermen argue about weather. Perfect neutral territory for the conversation I was about to have. Alyssa Whitby sat in the corner booth, nursing a coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. She looked like money, the kind that comes from old families and older investments. Blonde hair pulled back in a perfect bun, designer clothes that cost more than I made in a month. But her eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands shook slightly when she lifted the cup. Mrs. Whitby. I slid into the booth across from her. Cut the pleasantries. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. I want to know everything. For the next hour, I laid it all out. The text messages, the hotel receipts I'd found in Tessa's car, the late-night phone calls. Alyssa listened without interruption, taking notes in a leather-bound planner. How long? She asked when I finished. Best guess? 3 months? Maybe longer. She nodded, closing the planner with a sharp snap. Chad's at his office, probably calling lawyers. He thinks he can smooth this over with flowers and apologies. Think it'll work? Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. 22 years of marriage, Mr. Granger. 2 children in college. He's about to learn that some mistakes cost more than money. We shook hands like business partners, which I guess we were now. Partners in the fine art of making cheaters pay. I drove home to find Tessa's car in the driveway. She'd managed to get inside somehow, probably the spare key we kept under the fake rock by the garden. She was in the kitchen, laptop open, typing furiously. Jack, we need to talk. Nothing to talk about. You made your choice. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're pregnant with another man's baby, and you were planning to pass it off as mine. Pretty cut and dried. Tessa's fingers flew over the keyboard. You're being unreasonable. People make mistakes. Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice. A series of choices. She slammed the laptop shut. Fine. You want to play hardball. Let's play. I should have paid more attention to that laptop. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my boss, Pete Morrison. Pete's been running Morrison Construction for 30 years, and he's never called me before 9 a.m. unless someone was hurt or something was on fire. Jack, get down here, now. The tone in his voice made my stomach clench. Morrison Construction operates out of a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. When I walked into Pete's office, he was staring at his computer screen like it had personally insulted his mother. Sit down. I sat. I got an interesting email this morning. From someone claiming you've been harassing female employees, sending inappropriate messages, making unwanted advances. My mouth went dry. Pete, that's not... He turned the monitor around. Screenshots of text messages, supposedly from my work phone. Crude, disgusting messages to women I'd never even met. These aren't from me. They came from your work email account. Then someone hacked it. Pete leaned back in his chair. Jack, you've been with me for 8 years. I've never had a complaint about you, but this... He gestured at the screen. I've got to suspend you pending investigation. HR's orders. I stared at the fake messages, recognizing Tessa's handiwork. She'd always been good with computers. Better than me, anyway. How long? 2 weeks minimum, maybe longer if more complaints come in. I drove home in a fog of rage and disbelief. Tessa had declared war, and she'd fired the first real shot. But if she wanted to play dirty, I had 15 years of marriage to draw from. 15 years of secrets, embarrassments, and ammunition. Time to load my own guns. I started with Monica Fletcher, Tessa's best friend and partner in crime. Monica had been enabling Tessa's affair from the beginning, covering for her, providing alibis, probably cheering her on. Monica was also a notorious gossip with a drinking problem and a tendency to leave rambling voicemails when she'd had too much wine. I'd saved several of those voicemails over the years. Monica complaining about her husband, Monica bad-mouthing clients, Monica admitting to various small frauds and ethical violations at the real estate office. I forwarded them to Monica's boss, along with a note. Thought you should know what your employees really think of the business. Next, I called Tessa's mother. Hi, Mrs. Patterson. It's Jack. Jack, how lovely to hear from you. How's my daughter? Well, that's what I'm calling about. Tessa and I are separating. Silence. Then, oh dear, what happened? She's pregnant with another man's baby. The sound Mrs. Patterson made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. That can't be true. I have the text messages if you'd like to see them. More silence. Mrs. Patterson, are you there? Send them to me. I also sent copies to Tessa's sister, her brother, and her father. By noon, Tessa's phone was probably ringing off the hook, but I wasn't done. Juliet Hendricks lived next door and ran the unofficial Millfield gossip network through her Facebook page, Millfield Moms and More. 3,500 members, all hungry for drama. I knocked on her door at lunchtime. "Jack, I heard about the gift basket. Is it true?" Word traveled fast in a town of 8,000 people. "It's true, but there's more." I showed her the text messages, the hotel receipts, everything. Juliet's eyes got wider with each revelation. "Can I share this?" "Share away." Within an hour, Tessa's affair was the top post on Millfield Moms and More. The comments section exploded like a fireworks factory. My phone rang at 3 p.m. "You bastard!" Tessa's voice was pure venom. "You ruined everything." "I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already ruined. Monica got fired because of you." "Monica got fired because of Monica. I just provided the evidence. My family won't even talk to me." "Maybe they're finally seeing who you really are." She hung up. At 4 p.m., Pete called. "Jack, you need to get down here." "More fake complaints?" "No. Someone traced that email hack to your wife's laptop. You're reinstated, effective immediately." I smiled for the first time in 2 days. "Thanks, Pete." "Don't thank me. Thank whoever sent us the forensic analysis. Real professional job." I had a pretty good idea who that was. Alyssa Whitby had money, and money could buy the best computer experts in the state. The war was just getting started. The Millfield annual charity gala was supposed to be the social event of the season. Black ties, evening gowns, and enough donated money to fund the local food bank for a year. Held every October in the old Grange Hall, it drew everyone who was anyone in our little coastal town. I hadn't planned to attend. Formal events weren't my style, and after the week I'd had, I was looking forward to a quiet evening at home. But then Brendan Murphy called. Brendan worked as the IT guy for Coastal Properties, Tessa's real estate office. 24 years old, thin as a rail, and harboring what he thought was a secret crush on my soon-to-be ex-wife. "Mr. Granger, we need to meet." "About what?" "About the recordings." That got my attention. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from Coastal Properties and prying eyes. Brendan looked nervous, fidgeting with his laptop bag like it contained nuclear secrets. "I've been recording everything," he said without preamble. "Office conversations, phone calls, computer activity. Company policy. We're supposed to monitor for security breaches." "And?" "Your wife and Monica have been planning this for months. The affair, the pregnancy, even the fake harassment complaints. I have it all." He opened his laptop and played a recording. Tessa's voice clear as crystal. "Jack's too stupid to figure it out. By the time he does, I'll be living in Chad's mansion, and he'll be paying child support for a baby that isn't even his." Monica's laughter in the background made my jaw clench. "There's more," Brendan said. "Hours of it." "Why are you showing me this?" His face reddened. "Because she's been laughing about it. About you, about the whole situation. She thinks it's funny. And you don't. My dad got cheated on. It destroyed him." Brendan closed the laptop. "I thought you should know what she really thinks." "What do you want in return?" "Nothing. Just make sure everyone knows what kind of person she really is." The gala was Saturday night. That gave me 3 days to prepare. I bought a tuxedo from the rental place downtown. Nothing fancy, just basic black with a bow tie. When the clerk asked about the occasion, I told him I was planning to make a toast. Saturday evening, I arrived at the Grange Hall fashionably late. The parking lot was full of expensive cars, BMWs, Mercedes, even a few Teslas. Chad's red Porsche sat near the front entrance like a monument to arrogance. Inside, the hall had been transformed. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, and enough flowers to stock a funeral home. A small stage at the front held a podium and a large projection screen for the evening's presentations. I spotted Tessa immediately. She wore a blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment, her hair styled in an elaborate updo. She was holding court at a table near the stage, surrounded by Monica and several other real estate agents. Chad sat beside her, one hand possessively on her shoulder. He looked like a magazine advertisement for success. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect arrogance. I found a seat at the back and ordered a whiskey. The evening proceeded as expected. Speeches about community service, presentations about local charities, and enough self-congratulation to float a yacht. I waited patiently, nursing my drink and watching the crowd. At 9 p.m., the organizers announced a break before the final presentation. Perfect timing. I approached the AV table, where a college-age volunteer was adjusting the projection equipment. "Excuse me," I said, holding up a USB drive. "The organizers asked me to load the final presentation. Technical difficulties with their original file." The kid shrugged and plugged in the drive. "Just click when you're ready." I walked to the podium and tapped the microphone. The feedback screech got everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to share something special with you tonight." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tessa was staring at me with undisguised horror. I clicked the remote. The screen filled with text messages. Tessa's messages, blown up large enough for everyone to read. "I'm keeping the baby, but I'm putting Chad's name on the birth certificate." Gasps echoed through the hall. I clicked again. More messages appeared. "Jack's too stupid to figure it out. This is going to be easier than I thought. Chad's wife will never know." The crowd was buzzing now, a low rumble of shock and outrage. I could see people turning to stare at Tessa, who had gone white as her tablecloth. But I wasn't finished. The next slide was a photo. Chad and Tessa in a hotel room, kissing. Brendan had pulled it from Tessa's cloud storage. "Some of you might be wondering about context," I said into the microphone. "Let me provide some." I clicked again. Audio began playing through the sound system. Brendan's recordings, crystal clear. Tessa's voice filled the hall. "Jack's been a good little husband for 15 years. Time he learned what the real world looks like." Monica's voice joined in. "Are you sure Chad will leave his wife?" "He will once I tell him about the baby. Men are so predictable." The crowd was in full uproar now. People were standing, pointing, shouting questions. I saw several phones come out, recording everything. Chad had gone pale as winter fog. He stood up, knocking over his chair, and tried to push through the crowd toward the exit. That's when Ricky Morrison stepped in. Ricky was Pete's nephew, built like a brick wall and twice as solid. He'd been standing near the door, waiting for my signal. As Chad rushed past, Ricky stuck out his foot. Chad went down like a felled tree, arms windmilling, landing in a heap near the coat check. The crowd roared with laughter. Meanwhile, Tessa had found her voice. "This is harassment," she screamed, pointing at me. "He's stalking me." "With your own words?" I asked mildly. "Those messages are private." "We're private. Now they're evidence." I clicked the remote one final time. The screen showed a simple message. "The baby isn't Chad's either. DNA test attached." That was a bluff. I had no DNA test. But the crowd didn't know that. The effect was immediate. People began shouting questions at Tessa, who looked like she was about to faint. Monica had already disappeared, probably hiding in the bathroom. Chad, meanwhile, had picked himself up and was limping toward the exit, his perfect hair disheveled and his dignity in tatters. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "thank you for your attention. Don't forget to donate to the food bank on your way out." I left the USB drive on the podium and walked out of the hall, whistling. Behind me, I could hear Tessa still screaming, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd's chatter. By morning, the whole town would know the truth. Mission accomplished. Monday morning brought consequences. I was installing drywall at a renovation site on Maple Street when Pete found me, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Jack, you magnificent bastard. Half the town's talking about Saturday night." "Just half?" "The other half's talking about Chad Whitby's spectacular faceplant. Ricky's been getting free drinks all weekend." I set down my drill. "Any blowback?" "From who? Tessa? She's persona non grata at every business in town. Monica's already packed up and moved to Portland, and Chad..." Pete chuckled. "Let's just say his development projects just lost their financing." "Alyssa's work?" "Alyssa's work. That woman doesn't mess around." But I knew it wasn't over. People like Chad don't just slink away quietly. They get angry, and angry people make mistakes. I didn't have to wait long. Tuesday evening, I was leaving the hardware store when Chad appeared beside my truck. He looked terrible. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red from lack of sleep or too much alcohol. "We need to talk," he said. "Nothing to talk about." "You destroyed my life." "I exposed your life." "Big difference." Chad stepped closer, and I caught the smell of whiskey on his breath. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" "I think you should go home, Chad. Sleep it off." My wife froze all my accounts. My business partners won't return my calls. The bank's calling in my loans. Actions have consequences. Novel concept, I know. That's when he shoved me. It wasn't much of a shove. Chad was a businessman, not a fighter, but it was enough to make his intentions clear. "Feel better?" I asked. He shoved me again, harder this time. "Fight me, you coward." "Not interested." "What kind of man are you?" "The kind who doesn't need to prove anything to a cheating drunk." Chad's face twisted with rage. He took a wild swing at my head. I ducked easily and stepped back. "Chad, stop. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'll show you embarrassing." He rushed me, arms flailing like an angry toddler. I sidestepped and he crashed into the side of my truck, bouncing off the door panel. "Last warning," I said. "Walk away." Instead, he stumbled to his Porsche and climbed behind the wheel. "This isn't over," he shouted through the open window. He gunned the engine and peeled out of the parking lot, tires squealing on asphalt. I pulled out my phone and called Detective Ellie Marsh. Ellie and I had gone to high school together, and she was one of the few cops in town who took domestic situations seriously. "Ellie, it's Jack Granger. I need to report a possible DUI." "Where?" "Red Porsche. License plate." I rattled off Chad's number. "Just left the hardware store parking lot heading toward downtown. Driver's intoxicated and making threats." "On it." I climbed into my truck and followed at a distance. Chad was driving erratically, weaving between lanes and running stop signs. Perfect. He turned onto Harbor Street, then made a sharp right toward the marina. I knew where he was going, the boat slip where he'd been taking Tessa for their romantic rendezvous. The marina at night was a maze of shadows and creaking masts. Chad parked near the dock and stumbled toward his boat, a 30-foot cabin cruiser named Easy Money. I parked 50 yards away and waited. 5 minutes later, Chad emerged from the cabin carrying something. In the dim light, it looked like a baseball bat. He walked unsteadily back toward the parking area, scanning for my truck. When he spotted it, he raised the bat and charged. I started the engine and backed up slowly, keeping just out of his reach. Chad swung at my headlights, missing by inches. "Come out here," he screamed. "Face me like a man." I led him in a slow circle around the parking lot, always staying just ahead of his drunken swings. He was panting now, stumbling with exhaustion. That's when the police cruiser arrived. Ellie's spotlight hit Chad like a stage light, illuminating him mid-swing with the baseball bat raised over his head. He froze, blinking in the glare. "Drop the weapon!" Ellie's voice echoed through her car's PA system. Chad looked at the bat in his hands like he'd never seen it before. Then he looked at me, and I saw the exact moment he realized how this looked. "This isn't what it seems," he called out. "Drop the weapon and step away from the vehicle." Chad dropped the bat and raised his hands. Within minutes, 2 more patrol cars arrived. I watched through my windshield as they administered a field sobriety test. Chad failed spectacularly. As they loaded him into the cruiser, Ellie walked over to my truck. "You okay?" "Fine." He never got close. "We'll need a statement." "Of course." She glanced toward the police car where Chad was slumped in the back seat. "Third DUI is a felony in Maine." "Is it his third?" "Will be by the time we run his record." I watched the cruiser drive away, taking Chad toward a very different kind of future than he'd planned. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news? Well played. A.W." Alyssa was keeping tabs on her soon-to-be ex-husband. I wondered what other surprises she had in store for him, but that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, I was going home to a quiet house and a good book. The war was almost over. The next morning brought news that Chad had spent the night in jail and his bail had been set at $50,000. According to the local paper, his assets were still frozen, which meant he was staying put until his court date. I was reading the article over coffee when someone knocked on my door. It was Tessa. She looked terrible. Hollow-eyed, unwashed hair, wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 2 days ago. The pregnancy was starting to show, a small bump beneath her wrinkled blouse. "Jack, please, we need to talk." "Nothing to talk about." "I'm sorry, I made a mistake." "You made a lot of mistakes." She pushed past me into the house. My house, I reminded myself. The locks might have been changed, but old habits run deep. "I was confused," she said, settling onto the couch like she belonged there. "The pregnancy hormones, the stress at work. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to plan this for months." "That's not true." I pulled out my phone and played one of Brendan's recordings. Tessa's voice filled the room. "Jack's been a good little husband for 15 years. Time he learned what the real world looks like." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I didn't mean that." "You said it. People say things they don't mean when they're upset." "For 3 months? In dozens of conversations? That's not being upset, Tessa. That's being calculating." She started crying then. Big, theatrical sobs that might have worked on me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like manipulation. "I have nowhere to go," she said between sobs. "No job, no money, no friends." "You should have thought of that before." "What about the baby?" "What about it?" "It could be yours." I stared at her. Really? That's your play now? We were still sleeping together when I got pregnant. The timing matches your hotel receipts with Chad. Nice try. She wiped her nose with the back of her hand. A DNA test would prove it. You're right, it would. Something in my tone made her look up sharply. I already ordered one, I lied smoothly. Results should be back next week. The color drained from her face. You can't do that without my permission? Actually, I can. Amazing what you can accomplish with a good lawyer and documented evidence of fraud. She stood up abruptly. You're bluffing. Am I? For a moment, we stared at each other across the living room that had once been ours. Then she turned and walked toward the door. This isn't over, Jack. Yes, it is. After she left, I called Ricky. Feel like taking a ride? Where to? Chad's place. I hear it's been sitting empty. Ricky picked me up an hour later in his work van. We drove through the upscale part of town, past manicured lawns and houses that cost more than most people made in a decade. Chad's mansion sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, dark and empty. The landscaping was already starting to look neglected, and newspapers had piled up on the front steps. Looks like nobody's home, Ricky said. Looks like nobody's been home for days. We parked around the corner and walked back through the shadows. Ricky had brought his locksmith tools, a skill he'd learned in the Army and refined during a brief period of questionable life choices in his 20s. You sure about this? He asked as he worked on the back door. Chad threatened me with a baseball bat. I think we're past worrying about property rights. The lock clicked open. Inside, the house was a monument to expensive taste and poor judgment. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and enough leather furniture to outfit a small ranch. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. What's the plan? Ricky asked. Chad likes seafood, right? Let's give him some. We drove to the docks, where Ricky knew a guy who processed fish for the restaurants downtown. For $50, we bought 5 garbage bags full of fish heads, crab shells, and other aromatic refuse. Back at Chad's house, we got creative. Fish heads in the air conditioning vents, crab shells behind the refrigerator, shrimp tails scattered under the furniture. We worked methodically, room by room, until the entire house was a seafood graveyard waiting to ripen. For the grand finale, we filled Chad's hot tub with the remaining fish parts and turned on the jets. Think he'll get the message? Ricky asked as we loaded our empty bags back into the van. If he doesn't, his neighbors will. We were driving away when I noticed Chad's Porsche in the impound lot. It gave me an idea. One more stop, I told Ricky. The impound lot was run by Jerry Kowalski, a guy I'd done construction work for a few years back. For another $50 and a promise to fix his back deck, Jerry let us into the lot after hours. Chad's car sat in the back row, pristine red paint gleaming under the security lights. Shame to mess up such a pretty car, Ricky said. Not messing it up, just decorating it. We'd stopped at the party store on the way over. Pink streamers, balloons, and a banner that read, "It's a girl," covered the Porsche from bumper to bumper. I finished with a note tucked under the windshield wiper. Hope your new family enjoys the aroma. JG. By the time we finished, it was past midnight. Ricky dropped me at home, and I fell asleep feeling more satisfied than I had in months. The next morning brought a phone call from Monica. Jack, it's Monica Fletcher. What do you want, Monica? I need to tell you something about Tessa. I'm listening. The baby isn't Chad's. That stopped me cold. What? It's not Chad's, and it's not yours either. She's been seeing someone else. Who? I don't know. She wouldn't tell me. But she got a DNA test done privately last week, and she's been panicking ever since. Why are you telling me this? Monica's voice cracked. Because she threw me under the bus. I lost my job because of her lies, and she doesn't even care. She's been using everyone. You, me, Chad, whoever this other guy is. Do you have proof? I have the lab results. She left them at my apartment and never picked them up. Where are you now? Portland, but I can scan the documents and email them to you. Do it. 20 minutes later, the email arrived. The DNA test was conclusive. The baby's father was someone named David Martinez, according to the lab report. I'd never heard the name before, but I knew someone who might have. I called Brendan Murphy. Mr. Granger, what can I do for you? I need you to check something in Tessa's computer files. Look for any mention of David Martinez. Hold on. I could hear typing in the background. Got it. David Martinez, age 32, works for a catering company in Portland. Looks like they've been texting for about 6 months. Catering company? Yeah, Coastal Cuisine. They did the food for several of our office parties. The pieces clicked into place. Tessa had been playing 3 different men. telling each one what they wanted to hear. Chad thought he was the father. I thought I might be the father, and David Martinez probably thought the same thing. My phone rang. Unknown number. Jack Granger. This is David Martinez. I think we need to talk. David Martinez looked nothing like Chad Whitby. Where Chad was polished and arrogant, David was rough around the edges. Calloused hands, work boots, the kind of tan that came from actual labor rather than golf courses. We met at a diner outside town, neutral territory for a conversation neither of us had expected to have. So, you're the husband, he said, sliding into the booth across from me, and you're the father. He winced. Yeah, looks that way. How'd you find out? Tessa called me yesterday, crying about how you'd ruined her life. Said you were trying to pin the baby on some rich guy named Chad. And I got suspicious. Started asking questions. Turns out she's been telling me the same story she told you, that the baby might be mine, but she wasn't sure. I signaled the waitress for coffee. Let me guess. She wanted you to step up and be the father. Something like that. Said she was leaving her husband for me, that we could be a family. While she was also telling Chad she was leaving me for him. David shook his head. I feel like an idiot. Join the club. We're apparently a bigger group than I thought. The waitress brought coffee and left us alone with our mutual embarrassment. What are you going to do? I asked. About the baby? I don't know. I mean, it's mine, but... He trailed off. But you don't want anything to do with Tessa. Would you? Fair point. She's got nowhere to go, David said. No job, no money. Part of me feels sorry for her. That's the part you need to ignore? Easy for you to say. You're not the one who got her pregnant. I leaned back in the booth, studying this guy who'd been drawn into Tessa's web just like I had. He seemed decent enough, certainly more honest than Chad. Can I give you some advice? Shoot. Get a lawyer, a good one. Document everything, because Tessa's going to try to make this your problem in every way possible. Already started. My cousin's a family attorney in Portland. Smart man. We talked for another hour, comparing notes and filling in the gaps in each other's stories. By the time we parted ways, I almost felt sorry for the guy. Almost. That evening, I was grilling a steak on my back porch when Alyssa Whitby called. Jack, I thought you should know. Chad made bail. How? I thought his accounts were frozen. His mother posted bond. Apparently she's been following the news. Where is he now? Probably at his house, discovering your little gift. I smiled, remembering the fish heads in his air conditioning vents. Think he'll appreciate the gesture? I think he's going to be very unhappy. And when Chad's unhappy, he does stupid things. Stupider than getting arrested for assault with a baseball bat? Much stupider. She was right. At 10 p.m., Chad's BMW roared into my driveway. He climbed out reeking of fish and fury and marched up to my front door. I was waiting for him. Evening, Chad. How's the house? You son of a... He caught himself, probably remembering his recent legal troubles. You broke into my home. Did I? That's a serious accusation. I know it was you. Prove it. He stood on my porch, fists clenched, vibrating with rage. But he didn't swing. The baseball bat incident had taught him something about consequences. This isn't over, he said. Actually, it is. See, I had an interesting conversation today with David Martinez. Chad's face went blank. Who? The real father of Tessa's baby. Turns out she's been running the same game on him that she ran on us. That's impossible. DNA doesn't lie, Chad, unlike some people we know. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. He sagged against the porch railing, suddenly looking older than his 41 years. She played us, he said quietly. She played everyone. My wife wants half of everything in the divorce. Can't blame her. My business is ruined. Actions have consequences. He looked up at me with something approaching desperation. What am I supposed to do now? Learn from your mistakes. Try not to repeat them. That's it? That's your advice? That's all I've got. Chad walked back to his car like a man heading to his own execution. As he drove away, I realized I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected, just a hollow sense of completion, like finishing a job I'd never wanted to start. The next morning brought one final phone call. Jack, it's Tessa. What do you want? I'm leaving town, moving to Portland. Good for you. David said he'd help with the baby. We're going to try to make it work. Uh-huh. I wanted to apologize for everything. I almost hung up. Then curiosity got the better of me. Why now? Because I realized something. You were never the problem, Jack. I was. It was probably the most honest thing she'd said to me in months. Yeah, I said. You were. I hope you can forgive me someday. I hope you can learn to stop lying to yourself. She hung up without another word. That afternoon, I drove to the Anchor Tap for a beer and found half the town buzzing with gossip. Chad's house had been condemned by the health department. Apparently, rotting fish in the ventilation system was a code violation. Tessa had been seen loading boxes into David Martinez's truck. Monica was working at a chain restaurant in Portland, serving tables instead of selling houses. I ordered a whiskey and listened to the chatter, feeling oddly detached from the drama I'd helped create. Hell of a thing, said Jerry Kowalski, sliding onto the bar stool beside me. What's that? The whole mess. Chad, Tessa, all of it. Never seen anything like it. Small town, I said. Big drama. You doing okay? I considered the question. My marriage was over. My house was too quiet. My future was uncertain. But I was free. Yeah, I said. I'm doing fine. Jerry raised his beer. Here's to new beginnings. Here's to honest endings. We clinked glasses, and I realized something. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had sustained me through the planning and execution of my revenge had burned out, leaving behind something cleaner, peace maybe, or just exhaustion. Either way, it felt like progress. Outside the bar's windows, Millfield went about its evening business, people heading home from work, kids playing in the park, couples walking hand in hand along the harbor. Life continuing, as it always does. Despite the small dramas that seem so important to the people living them, I finished my drink and walked out into the evening air, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time in months. The war was over. I'd won. But more importantly, I'd survived. And sometimes that's victory enough.